Okay, what's going on is the ascension of Babylon. What we do here is we talk about the occult, we talk about spiritual self-development, and we talk about the healing process. If that is your thing, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, hype the video if you feel led to do that. And with all of that being said, let's just get right into it. So, I believe that before we incarnate, we will form what we can call, from our human, perspective, a soul contract. Basically, being an agreement between two souls that happens where we agree that there's going to be certain themes that take place within that relationship when we actually experience it in physical form. So we have our soul, it descends into matter to go through the physical experience, and then as it is, there's certain themes that we choose to explore. We can actually see this in our natal astrology chart. So some of these themes are going to have to do with certain relational experiences that we have, even certain relational traumas that we actually want to explore, usually based on a pre-existing energetic resonance that is like a carryover of past life incarnations. And it can get a little deeper than that as well, but I'm going to leave that right there for now. So a soul contract is when two souls, before they incarnate, are like, yeah, we are going to meet each other at some point in the life experience, and we are going to go through these themes together. And sometimes those themes can seem really harsh from the human perspective. Sometimes those themes can even have to do with abuse and really heavy levels of catalyst that we experience with that other person. But we usually meet these kinds of people at what we can call these checkpoints in our lives. Yes, we have free will, but there are kind of these things that are like predestined to happen. And this is a good thing because these things, these relationships, these themes that we are destined to explore are meant to give us the ability to actually better understand ourselves, because when we descend into matter, we forget. We go through the veil of forgetting, and we forget who and what we actually are. We forget that we both have these past lives, these past life experiences that kind of led us to the themes that we're choosing to explore now. And we even have future lives where there's these future versions of us existing in what we can call, different timelines that we can actually interact with. The point is we forget who and what we actually are. We kind of become imprisoned within a linear perspective of time. We form all these unhealthy beliefs and, protective adaptations within the psyche that are just these programs that are just keeping us in negative karmic cycles. We go through abuse. We go through experiences that we don't really understand. But all of this is meant to help us evolve. And then in the midst of all of this, there are these certain checkpoints that are divinely placed there by our higher selves. They are divinely placed there so we can better know ourselves, by going through whatever experiences come from that checkpoint. And this is where these soul contracts can come into play. So sometimes these are going to be family members where we've actually incarnated many times before, just choosing to play different roles. Maybe your mom in another incarnation experience is like your sister, or maybe you're your mom's dad or mother or whatever it might be. Maybe your brother in this lifetime potentially is something else to you in another lifetime, and so on. So the ancestral or family relationships that we have, some of those can be these soul contracts to where we've incarnated with those people many times to play different roles that are meant to help us basically evolve. And then even certain relationships that we form with people are predestined. We decide that within this matrix of free will, there are going to be certain elements of it that are set in stone for us. Now, we can experience that however we really want to, because once again, we have free will, but the overarching theme of the experience that we have with that person that we're destined to meet is something that's a little more concrete and a little more absolute, because it's meant to push us in a certain direction. It's meant to bring us into a deeper knowing of self. Sometimes that can be through catalyst, it can be through pain, and it can be through suffering as well. Even though as human beings we like to demonize those things, some of that we are actually pre-choosing to experience. So think of some of the worst relationships that you've ever been in, to where there was mental, emotional, maybe even physical abuse. Maybe some of those relationships were actually these soul contracts, or a soul is these soul contracts that you actually made before you even incarnated to resolve some type of negative karmic pattern that is attached to your overall field of energy, or that we can say is attached to your soul, because it's been incarnating into all these different physical reality experiences where you accumulated this suppressed negative resonance in association with trauma that you've been through, and in association with relational trauma that maybe you have been through with that person or with those people before, but maybe they were just in different avatars. Maybe your abusive ex-boyfriend or your abusive ex-girlfriend, maybe you abused them in another lifetime, and this is a form of cleansing and re-remembering that you're potentially going through. Maybe there's this other thing that happened between the both of you, and that energy that's still attached to both of you is now having the chance to process itself and resolve in the form of what you went through with that person in this life experience. And then of course, not all soul contract relationships are, negative or have abuse that's associated with them. Sometimes it's as simple as you meet a person, you connect with them for a short time. Maybe it's a person that plays the role of a mentor or a teacher, or just somebody that's there for you when maybe you're going through things that you don't really know how to process, and they kind of elevate your perspective. They change your life forever. They kind of set in motion this evolutionary momentum for you. And then, they are on their way and you guys kind of go your separate ways. Maybe it's other more positive relationships with, maybe it could be the father of your child or the mother of your child. And even though things probably aren't perfect in these kinds of relationships, there can certainly be the element of catalyst when we talk about intimate relationships and having kids with people and things of that nature, maybe you were actually here to bring another soul into the world that both of you have been incarnating with over and over and over again, to go through these different evolutionary experiences together and to, let's say, upgrade your soul's resonance. Because your soul is actually a piece or a projection of these higher bodies of energy that exist on a spectrum, and at an accumulative level make up what we actually call the higher self. So a soul is just a projection of that, deciding to incarnate in a physical body, and eventually when that soul returns to its higher bodies of energy, or its higher fields of energy, or the higher self in general, now all of that learned experience that it had incarnating and cycling in these different human lifetimes gets added to the overall intelligence of the higher self, which evolves the higher self. It's actually the evolutionary tension that it needed to expand its awareness and to grow a little bit more into the next phase of its evolutionary process. You know, the higher self isn't infinitely intelligent or anything like that. It's certainly a higher body of energy. It's what we can call a direct fractile of source or of God. But just like God is always learning and growing and evolving through us, the higher self is also evolving through us. You know, because everything operates in that fractalized kind of way. So the soul is a piece of the higher self that incarnates over and over again in the human experience, but eventually we can say it gets harvested back up into that higher body of energy, which upgrades that higher body of energy, and it expands its capacity for intelligence, and it brings it to the next level of, you know, its evolutionary process, or its evolution, which is just our evolution, because we are both the higher self and the soul having the human experience at the same time. So certain higher selves will actually work together in relation to the souls that are pieces of themselves that are projecting into the human physical experience. So this is when these souls basically have an agreement that, okay, we're going to explore these themes together. There are going to be these things that potentially take place between us, but this is going to help us better know ourselves in the long run, even if some of these themes have the element of catalyst, emotional heaviness, maybe even potentially abuse, and things that to the human being can be really difficult to go through and can be really difficult to process. And then there's the more positive relationships, where it could be like the example I gave before. You meet a person and you know them for a short time, but they completely change your life, and they completely shift the path that you're walking on, or they completely shift your evolutionary trajectory in general. And, you know, there's people in my life right now that just, on a deep intuitive level, I know are basically people that I've incarnated into different physical life experiences with. And we have these karmic patterns that are, associated with us, or that are connecting us together. There's two women in my life right now specifically that I have a very strong intuitive understanding are not only people that I've had different incarnational experiences with before, but are also a part of these, or of this, I should say, oversoul collective that my higher self, or that our higher selves are actually associated with. And if you don't know what an oversoul collective is, an oversoul is basically like higher selves that work together with other higher selves in a structured way to where there's a field of sentience or a field of energy that is the byproduct of these higher selves deciding to come together. So in relation to the human experience, these higher selves will come together. They will form this oversoul collective that is like a shared mind that has a shared intention, and they will project pieces of themselves into the physical experience. These pieces are souls, and then those souls will eventually meet each other in the physical experience to explore certain themes together. I believe the mother of my child is a soul contract that I have. I believe that this other woman who came into my life a couple of years ago, she's a very close friend of mine now. I believe she's like this soul contract connection that I have, and I think she's a part of this oversoul collective that I was referring to. We went through a very deep, primal, initiatory process together to where things were manifesting between us that most people would call supernatural, for sure. Things that maybe the average person wouldn't even be receptive of or wouldn't even really believe, and that'll be a video for another time. But these are just some examples of soul contracts that I have an understanding that are active in my life. I believe me and the mother of my child were actually predestined to go through certain catalytic experiences together, even certain healing experiences together, and we were meant to bring our daughter into the world. I believe that's something that was very much destined. And this other person that I was referring to, I believe that we were also meant to go through the evolutionary experiences that we went through that actually translated into us stepping into our authenticity in a way that we were not experiencing before we met each other. So this was a very deep evolutionary process that me and this wonderful friend of mine went through together. And this is actually associated with the cult initiation. But once again, I'm not going to really be getting into that in this video. It's a lot to break down and it's a lot to discuss. So think about some of the relationships that you've experienced in your life and some of the relationships that you are experiencing right now. We have free will. So I'm not saying that all or most of your relationships are soul contracts, but some of them absolutely are. Even the ones where there's the element of catalyst, or maybe you actually can't stand the person. Maybe you have unprocessed anger or hatred towards that person because of certain themes that you explored with them. But if you shift your perspective on those relationships, maybe those are themes that you can come to the realization that you actually chose to explore with those kinds of people. Soul contracts are a very real thing. And even when they are associated with the element of catalyst, especially if they're associated with the element of catalyst, these are relationships that are predestined to bring us into a level of awakening so we can more authentically walk our path. This is what I wanted to say in today's video. Thank you very much for being here. I certainly appreciate you. And I will catch you in the next video. Thank you so much.